Teaching is a vocation that asks so much more from an individual than just showing up, going home early and getting heaps of holidays. As a teacher, we strive to give the best education we can for each and every student. Students with special needs have the same right as any other student to access education, and it is up to the teacher to provide this for them. Each student should feel welcome, included, safe, and be provided with the appropriate materials to maximize their education. Each student should have the opportunity to develop self-esteem, become independent, and experience success. Visual impairment is one disability that teachers may come across in the classroom. Visual impairment is defined as a decreased ability to see that can't be generally fixed by normal means, such as glasses. There are levels of visual impairment that range from total blindness, legal blindness, and low vision. Blindness can be congenital, meaning you're born with it, or it can be adventitious, which means it happens during the course of your life. Visual impairment may also go undiagnosed, so a student in your class may not realize that they have a visual impairment, and they just may think their low vision is a normal part of their lives. Tests can be performed by doctors and optometrists to define the level of visual impairment a person has. Indicators of visual impairment to look out for as a teacher in the classroom include when students squint, when they copy work slowly off the board, if they need to move to the front to copy the work, if they get headaches reading or writing, and if glare affects their vision at all. Having a visual impairment has a big impact on your education. No two students with visual impairment are the same, and they must be managed differently in a class. The level of visual impairment of a student may also vary. This could be due to fatigue, the time of the day, and the lighting in the room. A teacher can manage a student with visual impairment by ensuring that appropriate planning, teaching, and assessment is conducted. When a student is diagnosed with a visual impairment, an individualized education program can be created. All relevant stakeholders can be involved in the creation of this plan. This includes parents, teachers, counselors, carers, occupational therapists, and even the students themselves. Safety is a very important part of the education plan. All risks should be assessed and managed, and these include moving between classes, excursions, and even emergencies. Transition training for the student is also important if they move classes, year levels, or even schools. Teachers and other students should also be educated on how to manage a visually impaired student in their classroom. Obstacles can be a problem for visually impaired people, and the environment should be managed appropriately to minimize these obstacles. Painting stair edges, indicating levels of change, introducing railings, are all things that can be done to the site to improve and accommodate a visually impaired person. A visually impaired person should be made aware of all features of the environment that are important, and also any changes that occur to the classroom or school setting. In a classroom, students should be encouraged to keep things neat and tidy, and also not to move things around to assist the visually impaired person. Glare from outside or other light sources should also be minimized in the classroom. The curriculum a teacher provides should also be adapted to accommodate any visually impaired people in their class. The teacher should ensure that all students know the requirements and are able to perform the requirements of any assessments. Assistive technologies can also be used by visually impaired people, and this will be covered a little bit later. When preparing the curriculum, the teacher should ensure that any resources for the task are made available in advance. This is to allow the visually impaired person the most amount of time to complete the task. Classes can also be recorded to allow review at a later date. When teaching, the material should be adapted and adjusted to meet the needs of the entire class. Concept development is very difficult for people with a visual impairment, and these areas must be covered with very concise and clear instructions and descriptions. Opportunity for kinesthetic and tactile learning is important for visually impaired people. When preparing written work or writing on the board, large fonts and clear fonts are important with a high contrast. In a science class, for example, chemical reactions can be felt, smelt, and heard and this can be experienced by a person with visual impairment. Keeping the general classroom noise to a minimum can avoid distraction and disorientation for the visually impaired person. Sitting closer to the front can also maximize audio that is heard by any students. Praise can be demonstrated by a verbal cue or a touch on the shoulder. However, this depends person to person. Independence of visually impaired people should be encouraged for future growth. Assessment tasks can also be modified to suit visually impaired people, providing appropriate or alternative assessments, reducing the amount of assessment, or granting additional time are strategies that can be used when assessing visually impaired people. Verbal assessments can also be used instead of written assessments. There are many tools that can assist visually impaired people throughout life and during their education. The JAWS screen reader. Accessibility settings on your phone or PC can enlarge the text that is generally found on your operating system. Audiobooks. Optical character recognition tools can also be used to assist visually impaired people in reading textbooks. An audio recorder can also be used to record lectures and classes. There are many technologies that are available, however it is up to the individual to choose which technology is most suitable for them. Other staff, supporters and resources are available to help you manage any students.